YouTube channel for this Greek class, and they think that this is like heavy, serious classroom material.
And they're right.
Yeah.
It is heavy.
YouTube channel
Like,
for this Greek class, and they think that this is that was the YouTube thing playing in the background. So okay, and I don't know if I'm going to need to use my iPad today, but I went back and reviewed how to connect it. I couldn't remember how to connect it so I could use like a whiteboard or blackboard, which I've done before. I just couldn't remember how to do it. So anyway, so I am going to share our notes, because the first thing I want to do is before we go into the workbook, and how come I'm not seeing this? Wow, that is really weird. That happened to me before too. Try it one more time. I want to share. Oh, I know why. Here we go. It's because it's on the screen over here. That's why I'm not seeing it. So, okay. So can you all see the, can you see my Greek notes then?
Yes.
They're up on your screen. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Because I'm not seeing it on my end. Okay. So when we see if we can do this without looking at the notes I've got up on the screen there. they're for reference if we're struggling with this. But when we're translating a sentence, the first thing we should look for is
verb.
The verb. So first thing,
or a linking verb.
Or what?
Or a linking verb.
Or a linking verb.
Substantive or something.
Yes. So when we find a verb, then what with the verb, then we go through and what do we do with the verb?
Parse it.
We parse the verb. Okay. So find the verb and parse the verb. Okay. Then the second thing we're going to look for is
nominative nouns or substantives.
Nominative noun or substantives, and distinguish a noun from a substantive. A noun is a substantive technically, but what is a substantive?
It's going to be an adjective with the substantive use of an adjective. So it could be including male, female, or just male, or just female, or a group of people. Or
right. A substantive is an adjective functioning as a noun.
Right.
Okay. And we're going to have in our if we get there in the workbook today, we're going to have a substantive that is a participle. They used that as one of the examples in there. So you're going to get to see that sometimes participles function as substantives also.
And if you have two, you're looking for nominatives trying to determine what the subject is. And if you have more than one or two, then you look for the one with a definite article. A lot of times it's in the beginning of the sentence. It could be at the end, depending, but it's because it's inflected. But look for the definite article over a nominative case noun.
Very good. Very good. Sometimes we're going to have substantives, but we are not going to be able to find a verb. So we're going to have verbless clauses sometimes, and we've had some examples of that in this lesson. And sometimes you're going to have a verb, but you're not going to be able to find a
noun or the person.
Not going to be able to find a noun.
Well, you can get the person.
Yes. So you're going to have to infer from context how to translate the ending on the noun. So we found a verb, we found a noun, the function or a substantive to function as the subject. Third thing we want to look for after that then is a.
You want to look for, sorry, Robin.
No, you're doing great, Joe.
You want to look for
last week without you, so.
You want to look for an accusative object, an accusative case, the direct object. And then also you want to look and see if there's any indirect objects and typically in a dative case.
Yes. Very good. Very good. Boy, you've been brushing up on your work, or you've been doing your work. This is good.
Well, you know what? I've been trying to keep up with you guys, so I just have to study on my own. I review it, bounce a few things around. And actually, on the test, I did actually better than I thought in terms of the translation. I thought I was going to struggle in the translation, but I actually did pretty good on that. It was really I struggled more on just remembering the glossary.
Okay, good job. So we found a verb, we found a subject, we found a direct object if the sentence has one, we found an indirect object if the sentence has one. And so then we're going to look for other phrases or clauses then that expand the idea that's being expressed in the sentence.
Right.
And then you're going to work for one of the things we talked about last week is that you're going to develop at that point what we call a provisional translation. Your provisional translation rarely ends up being your final translation, but you're going to have produced something that communicates the basic idea that's there, but then you're going to have to think about how to express that in English. And that's where kind of the art of just understanding your English language better and how to best communicate that. In fact,
understanding the author too, their way of using words.
Exactly. In fact, this is really interesting. I picked up about 3 weeks ago. I didn't even know this was available, but it came up in an email. I get an email from the Bible software that I use about every week, and they advertise something. And they came out this last year with the 2020 edition of the New American Standard Bible, which has kind of been my go-to Bible since I was in seminary. And my family read out of the NASB back in the 70s when I was growing up as a kid. We do that when we do our family Bible reading, because at that time it was kind of a little bit more modern translation. And one of the things I've liked about it is I found that they have improved their writing and vocabulary so that it communicates more like a 21st century person communicates in English. Even the 1995 edition of the NASB at times kind of sounded old. It didn't speak always the way we would speak in modern English, so there were even places there that I'm going, but that's kind of awkward. That I don't know that a lot of people would get that quite easily. And then on top of that, and I just have to share this, this is not totally Greek related, but Peggy has a couple times now in the last couple of days has been sharing some videos from the series The Chosen.
Yes.
I only watched one episode last year of that.
Oh, Tim, you have to watch them all.
Well, I think Peggy's trying to help me get through that. And so we got through, I don't know.
We just watched season 1 on YouTube. That's all I can do.
Okay. And one of the things that I like about that is I do not really feel like they're misrepresenting what Jesus is saying or these people are saying, but they're really taking it and they're really putting it in modern idioms and modern talk as though these are people talking to you today, the way they would talk rather than talking in King James English and such. And I was thinking, wow, that's good. That relates. So anyway. So back to the main lesson. There's an art to trying to represent in English what we have in Greek. So it means you have to really understand the Greek and the Greek idioms well and the Greek language and structure well to then try to figure out how you communicate that over into English structure. So with that, we're going to move to the workbook. We're on the bottom of page 48. Bottom of page 48, and I finally gave up on my old workbook and picked up the new one that you guys have because I was finding mine wasn't always following yours. So it means I'm having to go through and redo some of these for practice. But let's end this. Oh, it's down here. I'm sorry. Stop the share. Okay, so number 10. Who wants to start this morning and translate number 10? Joe, you're doing good. I'm going to let you.
Let me see. Number 10, right?
Number 10, page 48.
Okay, 10. So, okay, ego, aimi, hey, hodos, kai, hey, aletheia, kai, azoe.
Okay.
After I parsed it out. So, well, this one we know. I am the way, and the truth, and the life. But that's what I got when I did it.
Okay.
That's what it is. And we okay with that?
Yes.
Ego is the subject of the verb eimi. This verb requires a predicate nominative rather than an object to complete the meaning. Right.
Okay. And so remember, predicate nominative means that in the predicate part of the sentence, you're going to have a substantive that is in the nominative case. Because that nominative case, it has to agree with the subject in the nominative case, because it's saying this thing is this, or this person is this.
Equating them, right?
It's equating them. So it is not saying, it's not saying a person is doing an action. It's saying a person is this thing.
So all those, and there's a panorama, yeah, with the kai, and kai. But anyway, they're all in a nominative substantive female or feminine in that case. All those nouns are.
Yes.
Okay. And ego is a nominative as well.
It's the, yeah,
Nominative substantive, right?
it's the nominative first person
First person.
pronoun, which we haven't got to pronouns yet. So
Okay, why does the second declension noun hodos have a feminine article? Well, I was thinking, because I was trying to figure that out, is I think it would be weird to have two ha-has together. So they probably want to make it sound different. I mean, I got that from Spanish as well. You know how you don't want to have a vowel running into the vowel? But I don't know a reason other than that. I'm not sure.
The reason
Because it's feminine.
it's feminine. That's what
Feminine,
it is.
right? Okay.
So it's a second declension noun, but it is a feminine second declension noun. Just like.
But I was looking for other ones like that, similar. Just
You're looking for something less obvious?
Where can I find something where I see a double ha-ha, with a ha article and a ha at the beginning of the noun? I couldn't find anything else. So I was thinking that's, to me, it would sound weird if you're speaking it to hear ha-ha. So it's like in Spanish, you want a Y or an O sounding over something separate, something different in the beginning if there's a vowel after that, you just want to separate it and make it distinguishing. To me, that's what made sense to me. But yes, it is a feminine. Yep.
Yeah. And we do know that Greek adds endings to certain words to smooth that transition when you have two vowels back to back that kind of make it a strange pronunciation or odd pronunciation. So,
right.
Okay, Robin, number 11.
Okay. Anthropoi luusin tas kalas ecclesias kaitus kainas oikus. And I translated that to men destroy the good churches and the good or the beautiful churches and the new houses. I first said good, and then when I went back, I decided it should be beautiful instead.
I translated it good, but I thought about beautiful. The only reason I didn't was because I didn't leave enough space to go back and add the word beautiful.
Dissect and parse luusin. It's a verb in the present active indicative, third person, plural. Its lexical form is luo. The stem is lu. The ending is u-sin. Connecting vowel omicron, and the subject is they or men.
Okay.
How can you be sure that kalos modifies ecclesias and kainos oikus or kainus oikus? They match in gender, number, and case. And they are being used. What is the significance of this use? They're being used in the attributive way. Is that what it's asking?
Yes. So they're in the, what we call the attributive position, which is, in this case, the adjective stands where?
Directly after the article.
Yes, yeah. So you have the definite article, adjective, and the noun. What is the other way that the attributive position or the attributive position can be communicated?
You can have an article in front of the noun, right?
Well, it could be ecclesias tas kalas, right?
Yeah, so you'd have tas, ecclesias, tas kalas. Yes, exactly.
Right.
So as long as you have the definite article in both positions, that also then would be attributive. Okay.
Is this a compound sentence? I said no. Why or why not? Because the portion that comes after kai is not a complete sentence. It's just another noun with an adjective, which makes it a complex sentence, right?
It doesn't make it a complex sentence. It's simply a sentence that has two objects is all. So that they destroy, and there's just two objects of their action is all. So you have two direct objects. Okay, I'll take number 12 then.
So it's not, I'm sorry, so it's not a compound then?
It's not a compound because a
Okay.
compound sentence would have two verbs. You'd have two verbs. Pardon me? Yeah, you'd be having two clauses, one clause with each verb. So this is what we'd have. So it'd be something like you could put in there that the men destroy the good houses, and then you could add, but they build the new houses. You could have something like that. The good churches and then build the new houses. So you'd add another verb in the last part of it.
So you're saying just as long as there's a subject and a predicate on both in each clause, then it makes it a compound or a non-compound.
Right. That would make it a compound. Yes.
Or a compound, excuse me.
Yeah. Because remember, because a clause has a subject and a verb. It may only have a verb, but the subject is communicated as part of the ending of the verb at the very least.
Okay.
Is that clear?
Got it.
Okay. So number 12, didaskai, tas graphas to leo, kai euruskai, tain elethion, which would be, he teaches the scriptures to the people and finds the truth. Okay. Now, there's a couple of possibilities on this one, but we'll take it. What is the subject of?
Sorry, wait.
What people?
It's what to leo is people. To leo from leos, people. Okay.
Right.
So you said, go ahead, Joe.
Well, again, you would know it by context where you are in a in a looking above it or at it, prayed thing. But I use the he is teaching scriptures to the people, and I have they in parentheses because it's not there, are finding the truth, and it's the people that are finding the truth.
And that's what I was going to say. There's two possibilities on the way we handle the last part of this. And again, context is going to have to help us determine this. We only have this sentence here.
And you both said truths, but isn't aletheon singular?
It's singular. Yeah.
Truth. Yeah.
So the subject of didaskai then is unspecified. So we just translated he teaches, could be she, probably not it. The sentence, and it has no nominative noun, no nominative noun. So we have to develop the subject from the verb's ending and in keeping with the context is my long answer to that, but we don't have a context for us. Then it says, is leo dative, locative, or instrumental? I took it to be dative. It's receiving the action of the teaching. Or another way to look at a dative, just to kind of expand the way you think of it, is a dative can also mean that they are the thing that you're acting in their interest. So here, he actively is teaching the scripture in the interest of those people. So we would say to them, indirect object. If that is helpful, hopefully that doesn't make it more confusing. But as you come to understand the dative case, you're going to have a dative of what we would call interest, something done in the interest of another. Locate alethion, it's a noun, it is accusative, and it is singular. It's functioning in the sentence as the direct object. And if you remember, direct object is going to limit the action. So in this case, he finds, or we would maybe even say they find, we'll explain that in just a second. They find what? Not just everything, they find specifically the truth. So truth limits what they find or he finds. The gender of alethion is feminine. The lexical form is aletheia, and the declension is first. And
Tim, I have an observation on that one. And it's only when I got to the point of the translation of what makes sense.
Yes.
Okay? And because you could see that that the people, right? And they used a singular dative masculine, right? On that one.
Mm-hmm.
And so they treated it as singular as a group of a people, a singular people. But when in English, that's why I was thinking of the finding in a third person singular, you know. I was thinking, okay, the people are plural to us, so that's why I thought it is they. And so the connecting verb being uriskai, which is a third person singular, is I thought it's linking the people, because the people really is just, if you were to parse it, or if you were going to put it in a case, in a dative case, I mean, it could have been that's why it's singular to me, right? So
yeah.
I wanted to translate it by thinking of what makes sense in English. To me, it's they, or the people, are finding the truth.
Let's skip ahead to number 16 on page 51.
Oh, do we have to?
Yes.
Yeah, let's do it.
And we want to do this because what Joe's bringing out, this sentence expresses exactly what he's saying. It says,
Right.
Haleas sun agai kairain to hyro. Haleas is the people. It's singular. It is nominative singular. Nominative singular. But we translate it the people.
Which is
One
plural.
group, which is exactly which is exact. So it's what we would call a collective singular.
Right.
Okay, is the way you speak of it in English. We have collective singulars. People is one of them, even in English. Sheep can be a collective singular. Flock is a collective singular. So we have words like that. So then notice when you look at the verb sunagai, what does the ending tell you? How would you parse out
Third person.
Singular.
third person singular? And yet the subject is a verb that is plural by its nature.
Right.
We do have the word person, but normally we do not use leos in Greek of a person. We usually use the word prosopon, which is the word face, is normally the word in Greek that means a person. Okay. So when you're talking about a group of people, you use leos. So this is a good example. I really appreciated the fact that you caught that, Joe, that you can have a plural idea, but it takes a singular verb because you're looking at a collective noun, collective singular noun. Might as well finish number 16 as long as we're here.
Sure.
So it says the people gather. The people gather. If you didn't have the people there, you would translate it he gathers or she gathers. Okay.
You know
But
what I
here
did?
it's
I saw the definition that you have on our worksheet, it says to bring together. So to me, it sounds better to gather together. So that's what I
Yep.
put.
Yeah. Hey, let me make a little mark underneath there. Gather together. Hey, I kind of like that idea there.
You know, so I kind of use my I don't know. To me, it just, I'm trying to use that part where how does it make sense to us? You know,
Mhm.
to me, the gather is good, but you're gathering together.
Yeah. So the people gather, or if you were going to really emphasize it, the people they gather, even though they does not match the ending, but it's what's being said, to rejoice. And I would say at the temple is the way I would look at this. So sunagai is a verb. It's present, active, indicative. It's third singular, which you've already identified those. Sunago is the lexical form. And if you remember from last time when we went over sunago, we have the word sunagoge, which is a noun, and we translate it synagogue, which really synagogue literally meant a gathering place. So it was a Jewish gathering place in the same way that technically ecclesia for church meant a gathered group, a group that were called out to meet. The stem is sunag, the ending is I, the connecting vowel is epsilon, and the subject in this case is laos. So is Hyro, I'm going to let you guys answer this one. I don't want to answer it for you because, oh no, we have to do B first. Identify fully the word chirine.
I
An
said
infinitive.
infinitive, right?
It's an infinitive. What tense is it?
Oh, fully. It wants us to give it fully.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it has to be present active indicative, right? Because that's all we know.
And it's not present active indicative, present active infinitive.
Infinitive.
Infinitive, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, now down to number C. Hyro, is it dative, locative, or instrumental?
Dative.
I put locative.
I think locative is
Oh, I'm sorry. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
It's kind of tricky because I was trying to make it dative because of the way we're supposed to translate the 8 steps, looking for a dative. But then I agree with you. If you're either in the temple or at the table, it's locative, right?
That's right. So it's expressing the location. Yeah, in this case. Okay, we left off. Let's see. So we left off at the bottom of 49. So let's go to the top of page 50 then and pick up where we left off. And I do not remember who translated last. So
I think it's Joe's turn.
okay.
We're on number 13.
Yes.
Okay, 13. Okay. Synagomen baptizen te ecclesia.
And baptizein.
Oh yeah, Zain.
Yeah.
Te ecclesia. I have a problem with that height sound. Zain. I don't know why. Okay. So after I parse each word, there's an infinitive there once again. So I put we as amen is third person plural. We gather together to baptize. It could be at or in the church, another locative.
Yes.
Okay. Parse sunagomen, the verb, the subject, since there's a third person not mentioned, it's a we. Sunag is a stem, present, active, indicative, third person, plural. And the lexical form is sunago.
And it's first person.
Singular.
Plural.
Amen is we.
Yeah.
So that would be singular side, right? Or is it plural?
It's plural. We,
Plural.
but it's first person.
Oh, it's first person.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. First person, sorry.
Okay.
And then baptizein is baptizein a verb form, a noun, or an adjective. I put a infinitive, present, active, infinitive.
Okay, so that means it's a verb. Yes.
Verb. And then is ecclesia a locative, dative locative or instrumental? Once again, it's locative. How can I be sure? Once again, the case endings. It's also the location. It's giving its location. So in the church or at the church. And it's the location where they're gathering to baptize. So that's what makes sense.
Okay.
That's how I know that. I'm pretty sure about that.
Okay. There, I agree. I think the natural way to translate it is locative, just when you understand baptism and what it is. Baptism, spirit baptism at least, puts people into the body of Christ. So I was even thinking it could be locative in the sense of baptizing them into the church, but prepositions would be helpful in that case. So anyway, that was just another thought that I had in there.
Right.
But we don't baptize people into the church technically. That's the Spirit's work. So, okay, number 14 then, Robin.
What's the fact that they're gathering together? Where? At some kind of location again?
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Hoi presbyteroi agusin tus hamartolus te aletheia. And I translated that. Oh, I was really indecisive on this one. Okay. The elders lead the sinners with truth, by truth. By means of was what I meant. But I used lots of different ways to write that.
Okay.
Is hoi translated in this sentence? Why or why not? And I said yes. I don't even understand the question.
Well, I think that because sometimes, remember, we have definite articles that we don't always translate in English because it's awkward.
Right. So are they trying to be tricky though? Because that's not awkward here.
It's not. And so number one, it makes good English to start the sentence off saying the elders. You're talking about some specific individuals.
So yes.
Well, I heard one of your reasons I like to use it, Robin, is it makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
It makes sense. Okay. What is the function of tus hamartolus in this sentence? What is the significance of this function? And I said, is it a substantive with a big question mark? But it's confusing because we have this word as a noun. So it would be sinners, or it can be sinful, right? Which would be an adjective. So it would be used as a substantive if it was an adjective. You're going to have to help me. I'm not sure.
I put it as a direct object.
Direct object.
Is that what it means?
Because it's an accusative. What's helped me, Robin? I don't know if this helped you, but before I even go to translate, I parse every word, as every noun, verb.
Yes.
I don't parse the articles. I know they already, but I parse every verb, noun, and adjective, adverb. And then I try to go into and locate all those pieces. That's what's helped me. And then I play around with it, like you say, then I look for what makes sense.
I just think the questions don't make sense.
Yeah. So when I saw that it was an accusative plural, I thought, it's got to be the direct object of the action going on.
Yeah.
So
the reason they're asking this question is because they want you to stop and think about, okay, this is an accusative noun, as Joe's identified. So what ways do accusative nouns frequently function in sentences? Not always, but frequently they're going to function as
right
object. So they're the direct object of the action. So in other words, like I said, the direct object limits your action. We could say we could just have a sentence that says the elders lead. Well, they lead what? Well, they lead sheep and they lead horses and they lead people and they lead all kinds of things. They lead the band. But what he's saying is they lead sinners. So it limits their leading to the group of sinners that he's talking about.
Right. Yep. No, I get that. I just wasn't comprehending the question, I guess.
Okay,
Because all of that makes sense.
good.
Okay, locate aletheia. This is the part of speech is noun. It's in the lid case, and I'm using it instrumentally, although I think that you can argue for other.
Dative.
I think what they want it to be is dative. Because then the function in the sentence is, it's the indirect object, right? But that's not what I said. It's singular in number, and it is feminine. It is a first declension noun. The lexical form is aletheia. Aletheia, sorry.
So again, this would be a sentence that the context would hopefully be helpful.
Right.
I took it as a locative, that they led them to the truth.
Mm,
So it's talking about the location, like the other ones where people were gathered to the church, back up in verse 13. But the minute you said they lead the sinners by means of or with the truth, which would be an instrumental, that also it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Like I said, hopefully context would help you kind of narrow down, am I talking about how they're leading them or where they're leading them?
right.
Okay.
It can be
I
all
don't
three of
think
them.
that this is one of the ones where I don't think a dative works. I don't think there's a dative option that makes sense because they're not leading the sinners.
Two truths?
They're not, well, but you're talking about two that way in terms of location. So that's why I don't
Right.
think, that's why I think locative makes sense, whereas the dative would be giving something, doing something where the truth receives them, or it's in the interest of the truth, and that's not really what it is.
Wouldn't the sinners be receiving the truth then?
Right.
That's
They-
where it would be dative.
Exactly. And sinners is in the accusative case, not
So it'd have to be that they lead the truth to the sinner
right.
for
Yeah,
it to be dative.
right. And that's not the sentence we have. So yeah, I think the two options that make sense are the location and or the instrumental. And I like the instrumental that you translated with, because that also makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
Okay, Joe, number 15.
Okay. 15. This one was a tricky one just because of the article tous in the middle there. I have a question about that. But anyway. Aposteli, ha, kurios. Here they have tous. Mathetas, to, cosmo, legain, tois, laois. So provisional, I had send out the Lord, the disciples to the world to speak. Anyway, I have this as the Lord sends out the disciples to the world to speak to the people.
That's what I had.
That's what I ended up with.
Okay.
The question I have was weird, is when I was parsing this was the tous that threw me off. I was thinking, why is it not tos? Because I have mathetes as accusative plural.
Which is true. And what case is tooth? Oh, Robin, what case is tooth?
It's the same, but it's also that mathetas is masculine.
Masculine. Is that why? It follows a declension, not the
Right. So the definite articles go with gender, not with declension.
Yeah.
So tous
Gender,
is the
not-
masculine definite
tous is a
article.
masculine gender. Okay, there you go. That's right. I was like, wait a second,
Yeah.
Thank you.
And mathetes is
Mathetes is
it's a first declension noun, but it is masculine gender.
Gotcha. Okay, that was good. Good review on that one. Because it was like, wow, it didn't make any sense. But anyway, now it does. Okay, see what happens when you go on vacation?
All right.
And then I had a class after that. So anyway, mathetas. It's a noun, part of speech. It's accusative, plural. It's the direct object. It's a masculine, and the lexical form is mathetes, and it says first declension. The infinitive is used to express purpose in the sentence. And
So so if you stripped everything else out of the sentence and you just took the subject, the verb, and the infinitive, you could say the Lord sends to speak. We don't know who he's sending, but he's sending for the purpose of, that's why they're calling this a purpose infinitive, for the purpose of speaking.
speaking, that was the purpose, right? Like,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's see.
Is laois dative, locative, or instrumental? I have it parsed as dative, plural, masculine. Again, based on how can you be sure, and based on this case, how is the word used in the sentence? And once again, I'm sure because of the case ending for one, and it makes sense. I like that to me. The people are in the reception position in that sense, right? They're receiving they're receiving what's being spoken.
That's right.
So
Now,
go ahead.
So we're going to go back. I'm going to back up here with this. So our translation is the Lord sends the disciples. So disciples in the direct object, remember the direct object limits the action. So they're not just sending anybody, sending specifically the disciples.
Mhm.
And then you handled to cosmo. Now there's two ways you could do that. They're in the world and he's sending them, or you could translate it, he's sending the disciples into the world. So
Right.
don't stay cloistered. And you really have this in scripture where Jesus Christ actually sends the disciples and he tells them to go out to all those places. Don't this idea that Christian, anyway, I'm going to get into some doctrine, but God never intended for us as Christians to stay cloistered together or hide out in the mountains. He expected us to be out there in the world for the purpose that he says here, to speak to the people, which is exactly what Jesus had them do. So there was a purpose to speak, but they had to do that out in the world to the people. But just trying to give an option and understanding the locket or the lid case, to cosmo, exactly how we handle that. So could be in the world or could be into, kind of depending on where they already are. Okay. Any other questions on that verse? That was actually really good. Bottom of page 51 then, number 17.
It's you.
Oh, you want me to do that? Okay.
It's your turn.
Sure. Okay. So Palin and Tulane, Kainane, Grapho, Humin. And again, a new command I write to you. Right out of 1 John 2:8. And I added an indefinite article and for clarity in English, because a word like that without a indefinite article just kind of sounds odd in English, even though it doesn't always communicate precisely what the way a Greek thought. Okay, what part of speech is Pauline? You guys answer this one.
What?
What part of speech is Pauline?
That's a Pauline.
I don't know. I don't know what that
Hold on. I gotta find the thing. Pauline, I have it as an adverb.
It is. So an adverb
describes a verb.
Okay, so it's modifying a verb. And what's our verb here?
To write, right?
Right. So
and when I looked at that, I know the word means again, but I actually went in front of that and went to the previous to John 2:7 to see if I can get context.
Mm-hmm.
In John 2:7, he was saying something else about the old, and I said, but now, or in another hand, or I'm doing something else now. Here's a new commandment.
Yeah.
So it's not just again. It's like, to me, it makes sense to say,
and now.
And now, or on the other hand, here's the new one, or something like that.
Well, the situation that you have there in 1 John 2, back in verse 7, beloved, I am not writing a new command, but an old commandment which you've had from the beginning. The old command is the word which you've had. And so when he has again, so he says again now, I'm writing then this new command. So in other words, he says, I'm repeating this command to you that I've already written to you. It is a new command, but it's also old. And I had a friend that used to disagree with me on this that I worked with, but he disagreed because he says, John would never have referred to the new command as an old command. But 60 years have passed since Jesus gave the new command in John 13. So 60 years or maybe more have passed. And he's just retelling these people here in this verse, when he calls it an old command in verse 7 and new here, he's simply saying, I'm just repeating what you already know. I'm not giving you something brand new that you guys haven't already heard. So he reiterates this to them. I don't know.
The end of 2:7, though, isn't he saying that the old commandment is the word that they've already had, right?
Yes.
They've heard. So
Exactly.
now here's, or not, now or again. I suppose it could be again, but I was just thinking that because what I did is I went to go to my wife's NASB and I thought, okay, how do you have it? And they see it as on the other hand. I was thinking, So I'm just trying to get a good understanding of today for the way Pauline could be used,
Yeah. The reason I think again is still legitimate, if I didn't make that clear, is he's saying in verse 7, I'm not writing to you a brand new command. I'm not telling you guys something you haven't already heard. I am repeating the command that's old. You guys have been hearing this now. Well, Jesus gave it 60 years ago. So for all the time you guys have been saved, you guys have been hearing this command. And he says,
I'm going to repeat
so then
it
in
again.
verse 8, I'm writing it to you again. In other words, in fact, there's a legend story about John that when he returned to the city of Ephesus after he was released from his imprisonment on Patmos, that he went into the church at Ephesus, which was a notable church. And if you remember, when Jesus dictates the letters of the 7 churches in Revelation, what is his problem? What is Jesus's problem with the church at Ephesus? Do you remember? They have left their first love. They've lost or left their first love. So when John gets back to that church after his imprisonment, he gets up on a Sunday. They want this elderly apostle to get up and speak to them. And he preaches a message saying, you need to love one another. He comes back the second week and they said, we want you to keep preaching. He gets up the second week, preaches the same message, love one another. And they're thinking, okay, he's a doddering old fool, made a little mistake. Third week, he gets up and he preaches the same message, love one another. And they ask him, why do you keep preaching the same message? Because you're not loving one another. You need to be loving one another. And I'm just going to keep telling you the same thing until you do it, which is really what 1 John is doing. He's telling these people that they ought to be loving one another. It just kind of permeates that whole letter. So I don't have a problem with translating it again here, because he's saying, I've already told you this. It's an old command, and I'm going to write it to you again. Okay. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, it's good. And I'm glad we're in this part of the translation point, because I'm trying to bring in the last parts of it where you're looking at the sentence, previous sentence, the chapter, perhaps the book, perhaps the way the author has been writing it in the past.
Right.
Which is going to take a little longer investigation to get to a clearer translation of what's really the author meant. So that's good, though.
So I'm defending the traditional again, despite the fact that I like the New American Standard and I know how they translate it there. I personally kind of think the again makes sense in terms of what John is trying to pursue. Okay. Cool. Top of page 52, then parse Grapho. It's a verb. Subject is I. The stem is graph. Tense is present, active, indicative, then voice and mood. Person, first, number, singular, and lexical form is Grapho. And then they tell us whom in, because we haven't really learned our pronouns yet, but whom in is the dative, locative, instrumental form of su. okay, or sa, depending on different people pronounce it differently. Okay, where are we at? Who gets number 18?
I do.
Okay,
Hatheas agape estin kai ha menon en te agape en totheo menai kai hatheas en auto menai. So I said that says God is love, and the one abiding in love is abiding in God, and God abides in him.
okay. So let me ask you a question.
Okay, is it one that I have already answered?
Why didn't you translate the definite article in that first clause?
Because it's awkward English.
I agree. I translated it, but it is awkward English. Yeah.
I didn't translate it later either.
Yeah. I think there was one time you did and then one time you didn't. It kind of depends on whether I think when you said he abides in love is in, well, actually you didn't. I thought you did, but maybe you did not. Okay. Anyway.
Mm-mm.
Okay. So question A.
Okay, what is the subject of estin? I said God. And on what do you base your answer? It is that first clause there has a predicate nominative, so it's equating love with God. So God is the subject, right? And love is the
Predicate nominative. Yeah.
which is not an object.
That's right. Because it's in the nominative case.
Right. Okay.
Plus, there's a definite article, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. How did you choose theos as the subject rather than agape?
Well, it has the definite article, but also because that was the way the sentence made sense,
Okay.
I guess. So
Yeah.
that's cheating.
No, that's the definite article is
Definite article.
your key, but it also makes sense. Okay.
The next one is just telling us Menon is a present active participle that is nominative, singular, masculine. Menon is used substantively in this sentence.
So this is what I've been telling you for a while, that you're going to have substantives that are sometimes going to be participles. That actually is really, really common in Greek. There's lots of times that you have participles that function as substantives, the ones that are doing this.
Right. So they're saying the ones abiding, but the way that we have talked about that before has always been the abiding one versus the ones that are abiding. Does it matter? It means the same thing.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
List the occurrences of paranomasia in this sentence. Is this a point of accidents or syntax? I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't do that yet.
I just used the words menon, menai, menai. Maybe
Okay.
that's what I picked.
I would say those are the key ones. You have that verb repeated 3 times.
Right.
Yeah. As a participle and 2 times as a verb. So question, is that accidents or syntax?
Syntax.
It's syntax, because accidents is about,
Prefixes and suffixes.
it's about word formation.
Right.
Syntax
Is order.
is about word order. So it's about putting words together. So they've used this, John's used this verb meno 3 times, putting them together in 3 clauses here.
The other one could be theos.
And I marked theos down because you have you do have a tie all throughout this context. Yeah.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's a matter of syntax. Okay. Good.
All right.
Any other comments or questions?
No, this was a good one. It makes you think. It makes me feel good, actually, that I'm actually starting to dig deeper into to try to get a more meaning, you know. And it was a great discussion on the previous one on again, or that was really good, you know. It just opens you up to more possibilities, you know.
Mhm.
I'm trying to get out of trying to get more out of the you know, the exact translations versus ideas and what they're trying to articulate, which is really good.
Okay.
Well, it was interesting, Tim, what you were talking about before we started into the workbook about how I can't remember. I was reading in the textbook, I think, and they were talking about translating. And I just have been thinking so much about how if you, as a person translating the Bible, if you don't understand the biblical context, the context of the first century when things were being written, it would be really difficult to then go and translate in a way that would be understandable to us to give the same meaning. Because as we know, words change in definition over time. So a word that meant something to them might mean something completely different to us now. And so we have to find the right words, which is where I imagine the glosses of word, like if we were to look at a lexicon from 50 years ago, even, it might have different glosses today than it did then.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I've got my favorite lexicon that I used was published back in the 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And I still really like that. But occasionally I pull him up and I look at a word that I know, but I'm just looking for an alternative. And it's like, that word, nobody uses that word anymore in modern English.
Right.
And so I have another lexicon that was published back in the 80s, and I find their definitions or his definitions better that way. I also have Munce's, which was published in the 20th century, early in the 20th century. That also is very helpful. The one problem I have with Munce is he doesn't, and generally with modern lexicons, they don't always give enough distinction, in my opinion, to words. And words don't always have really clear, distinct meanings. But a lot of times I think if an author used this word rather than this, he means something different. I don't think they didn't write scripture just to try to be, well, let's put it this way. When I write and I check my writing, like on Grammarly or something, just to kind of see how it is, one of the things they say is, well, you use the same word in 3 sentences 3 times. That's not good writing. You need to vary that.
Sure.
But the writers of the Bible don't necessarily always do that. They're communicating. And if, like the example we looked at just in this last verse, where we have pronomasia, Menos repeated 3 times and God's repeated 3 times because that's the idea. And John isn't compelled to go, oh, I need to go flip up my Rosé's thesaurus and find a different word so that these people don't get bored reading the same word again and again.
Right. Well, and part of that too for them, I mean, they didn't have Grammarly, they weren't real concerned with that stuff. But part of that too was that they were mostly people were learning by speech. They weren't reading the letters, right? And so it's easier to remember things that are said if it says the same words over and over and over again, because then you don't have to remember 6 different words that all mean the same thing. You just have to remember the one word.
My wife, the school teacher over here, she will tell you the maxim for teaching is that repetition. Can't remember the exact expression, but repetition is the mother of learning or something like that. And people don't like that, but doing things again and again, which is why, with kids in school, they just do pages after pages of multiplication tables and so on, because you got to do it again and again. It becomes muscle memory.
Muscle memory, right?
Yeah. And it's the same thing with exactly what you're saying. That is a really good illustration. In an oral culture, the more times you repeat something out loud, the better it helps people hear it and remember it. So,
I've always, I don't know if this is the right forum to bring it up, but I was thinking about this and how, you have to have an open mindset and be able to agree to disagree, because there could be scholars that know this stuff and they think they're insistent on the way they're translating, and that could cause divisions, sometimes in people that are believers. And so I wondered about that in having heard of some split ups, and I was just curious why. And I don't have an answer, but I'm thinking maybe this is one of them. Maybe they were just too set on their way, I don't know. So you got to be open about it,
Yeah, I can testify to the fact it's something I struggle with. Being flexible that way. One of the other things that, and Joe, you were indicating this, but all of us have seen this. In order to translate, you also have to interpret, and so that means you have to kind of figure out what they're trying to say. So that's partly interpretation, or that is interpretation, because otherwise you're not going to translate in a manner that represents what actually is being communicated in the text. So, and I wish I could come up with some really good examples. I've heard people do these before, where they actually take texts of scripture and they translate them just literally, word for word, very, very rigidly. And you'd read it, and almost every modern English speaker would listen to that, and it would just be gibberish to them. It would not make good sense.
What I really believe is that as much as this was all breathed into the writers by the Spirit, I think at the same way it's on the reverse side, that it's going to be breathed into us by the Spirit to understand what the original writer was trying to say. It means to be able to interpret these things, it's really important to be in sync with the Spirit. I think it's just really important.
And go read the last verses of 1 Corinthians 2, and this is what Paul says. And modern interpreters don't like that. I've got well-respected commentators and writers that they think every Christian's spiritual, because they think spiritual simply means they have the Spirit. But Paul actually is drawing a distinction between Christians who are spiritual and Christians who are fleshly. And he says that the spiritual Christian welcomes the things, then the unsaved man, the natural or soulish man, does not welcome the things of God. And that is what you're saying is a really good example of the fact that you have people that, because they can't accept the plain statement there of Scripture, then they have to go and reinterpret it and maybe even retranslate it so that it represents what they think. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does make sense. That's why there's so many assemblies, so many different things,
Yeah.
That's what makes it, that's why it makes it important to allow to be spiritual, really, to allow that and be subject to that. And I really believe we're going to be taught this too by the Spirit.
Yeah. So definitely there's a lot more than just knowing Greek or Hebrew or Aramaic, more than just knowing rules. There's also a key facet, I think, of a believer being spiritual, so that they can be led by the Spirit, so that they can think properly. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And obviously,
I mean, we've heard it so many times, right?
Yeah.
Our Christian life is right here in our minds. So,
and in the history of translation, I mean, we have no guarantee that everybody that's participated in translation has even been a Christian all the time. There's been some great Greek scholars that they're not even for sure that Jesus is alive, things like that. So they're obviously not a believer. And then there are a lot of Greek scholars that are believers, and trust we can benefit from their work. Okay. Hey, this was great. I enjoyed the discussion.
Yeah.
Did a good job. So we will meet the first Tuesday then in the new year will be our next class. And read ahead through lesson 8. We're going to get into prepositions. Yay! Prepositions are exciting. They're going to add a lot of breadth to what we can do. And so work on prepositions. A lot of that's going to involve memorizing vocabulary is what it's going to be. And realizing that prepositions have a breadth of meaning. Some prepositions are going to have different meanings depending on what case you use them with. So.
It's the part where we start to get into, some of the prefixes that are added to nouns, like cross and things like that, or not yet.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, I'm going to end this. We will talk to y'all later. Have a great Christmas.